Welcome to the Ambitious Introvert Podcast, created especially for introverts, empaths, and highly sensitive entrepreneurs to help you build, grow, and scale a successful, sustainable business. I'm your host, Emma-Louise Parks, business and mindset coach for ambitious introverts. After 17 years working as an air traffic controller, the ultimate fast-paced, high-stimulus, extrovert-friendly role, my mission now is to show introverts that they too can create big results and success because of who they are, not in spite of it. I focus on introvert-friendly business and marketing strategy to help you switch overwhelm for clarity, confidence, and clients. Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of the Ambitious Introvert Podcast. I'm Emma-Louise, and this one is going to hit home with so many of you because it is a word that comes up with every single client I work with. I think it's come up on every single application I've ever had to work with me, and it's one that I use myself a lot, and that is overwhelm. So I can't think of anyone better to speak to than Rini. I'm going to let you introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about what you do and why you are the person to talk to us about the dreaded overwhelm.
Hi, thanks Emma-Louise for having me on. I'm Rini, and I basically have been overwhelmed my whole life, a lot due to introversion, but also due to other things, And so I have a lot of personal experience, but my basic background is studied computer science and worked in the tech industry for 5 years and was constantly overwhelmed, way too extroverted of a job, meetings, everything. Decided I want to be a coach. And then I was like, wow, life is overwhelming. It's hard to just switch careers. It's hard to build up your own business. And also I'm anxious all the time. Like, what is going on in my life? And so I read all the self-help books I could find. I hired my own coach. I did all this work. And at the end of the day, I realized the answer for me to being overwhelmed was to ask for more help. And so my book that, I'm kind of going around promoting is called Help, I'm Overwhelmed. And it's just about how to build a support network. And so for the past 18 months or so, I wrote the book, published it, and now I'm an author and speaker, talking to groups. I love public speaking and coming on podcasts, just letting people know it's okay to be overwhelmed and then helping them kind of like take the first steps out of that. So that's a little bit about me and how I got to this topic.
I love that. And I love that, as we were just saying about before we hit record, like nothing's a cure. There's nothing wrong with being overwhelmed. And it's not like we have to fix it. But if it's holding us back from creating the life business that we want, doing the things that we want to do, it's like having tangible steps that we can take to manage it and to get it to a level that we're like, yeah, this is fine. Like, it functions. I'm still doing what I want to do, but not making ourselves wrong for feeling that way, right?
Definitely, 100%. And then a big thing for me has been mental health help. And the best helpers I've had, coaches, therapists, everyone, has been people who say, it's okay to feel the way you're feeling. It's just okay to be that way. So that's a message that has helped me so much.
I think that is so important, especially as introverts and especially as, my audience are generally sensitive introverts, that you are human and we're here, on earth having a human experience. And, it's not to dismiss our feelings or to make ourselves into robots and not feel them. Like, it's totally okay to feel your feelings. But, just because you are sad that day, that's okay. You can be sad without it affecting you as a person, without it becoming your identity and all of those things. Do you identify as highly sensitive, just out of interest?
Oh, definitely. And I think that's hard for me because, I'm I come across very polished. And so I can fake being an extrovert really well. By Myers-Briggs, I'm also an INFJ. I think that's what you are when I looked you up.
Yeah.
But I can fake being an extrovert. And so when I'm suddenly overwhelmed and sensitive, it's like people don't get it because they're like, Woody, you're so friendly. You're so talkative. But I'm like, no, like even doing the dishes, little things like work things, social interactions, very, very highly sensitive in all those areas.
I also think that, I do have male guests on the podcast, but not as regularly as female, just I think by nature of the industry and the audience that I have. But being an introverted, sensitive male in a patriarchal society, and especially, like you say, working in tech, which is, could be very bro and extroverted. How is that?
Yeah, it's a growing experience, but it's also it helps me feel like I have a unique purpose because there are so many men out there as well who need this message, you know? And I will say I often work better with women, and women are more accepting of the message because men have been conditioned to just shut themselves off, you know, and to not be compassionate for themselves. And the audience can't see it, but I am wearing a pink shirt today. You know, I've got kind of a pink theme going on in my life. I love bright, like kind colors. And so it's been hard, but also it has forced me to really be my true self because I just couldn't get away with faking it anymore.
There was quite a drive in the media over here in the UK a few years ago, and it was to get men to open up and ask for help and, you know, mental health and all of that, because here in the UK, I still think it has been less acceptable to have therapy. It's very strange compared to, you know, in the US where it's just very normal. We're definitely behind with that. But, you know, so many of my female friends would just be like, oh, yeah, I've been seeing a therapist. But if I said that to most males here, they would think it was a sign of weakness or of something being wrong.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, and that's something I've learned too, is we just treat mental health differently than physical health. You know, if I have a broken leg, I don't worry about going to the doctor. I'm going to go, right? And I am completely powerless to heal that broken leg. So I need a doctor to do it, you know? But with mental health, we think we can think ourselves out of it. We think we can coach ourselves, therapize ourselves, all those things. But it's just like trying to do surgery on your own hand with your hand. You know, it's just not possible. Even our brains, we need another person in there to co-regulate with us, to empathize with us, and to guide us. And so I think society, all of human society is behind. But yeah, like I know Britain has a stereotype for being a little bit more uptight, maybe, or a little bit less loosey-goosey than us Americans. I don't know.
Yeah, I think so. One of my clients who's in the States, she used to live in DC, and I said something about therapy not being such a common thing here. And she's like, oh, it's like on every corner in DC, there's a therapist, and they all have waiting lists. I was like, oh yeah, it's really not like that here. There is still that stigma, and it's really sad. But I was an air traffic controller before I started my business, and obviously high pressure job, people would burn out, need support, maybe have incidents where they, you know, needed to process it. So it was actually available. It was part of the, you know, you could be like, hey, I need to talk to someone. And really not that many people took it up. But I do think in certain industries, it's starting to be seen as like, this is a great support to have for the people working for us. And which brings us nicely to what you said at the start, is support. And there is this thing, especially I think, a lot of sensitive people are people pleasers, or they take, you know, everyone else's problems on and want to help them and fix them, and are so reluctant to reach out and ask for support themselves, that when you said that, it's like getting support is everything. That resonated so much with me for, you know, my own life and also what I've seen in my clients and building their business. Have you found it difficult at times to make that outreach and say, hey, like, I need some help here?
Oh yeah, definitely difficult. It's so hard to start because I think, again, for me, it's just a sense of shame in asking for help, you know? And then there's something I call it, this is a word I'm coining, called overwhelm checkmate. And what I mean by that is when you're overwhelmed, you need the help. Let's say you're going to go get therapy, just for an example. And it's so much work to like sign up for therapy, to decide how you're going to go, get on the waiting list if there is one. In America, you know, you got to use your private insurance, like all these hurdles, and that's super overwhelming. And then you're going to spill all your secrets to a stranger, right? Which is super overwhelming. So it's like these two things combined to just checkmate you so you can't even move, like you're just stuck. And so for me, the key thing was having that one person who could break me out of that by like being safe to be around. And I could just say, I don't even know what to do. I'm overwhelmed. You know, kind of like the title of my book. It's just like, help, like, and have that person say, I'll help you get your insurance ready. I'll help you get on a waiting list. I'll help you with all that. So you just have to show up to the therapy, to the this or that. And so I think you probably as a coach do that sometimes too. I'm sure people come to you and say, hey, I'm overwhelmed. And just by being in your presence, bouncing it back and forth, then they can move forward, right? And take action. But I think for me, I was really stuck. And my story is actually that a primary care physician, a doctor, my GP said, hey, Woody, all your medical issues are due to anxiety. And she handed me a pamphlet that said, your company pays for 4 free therapy sessions, just like you said in air traffic control. My company in tech paid for therapy. And because that part was taken care of, my job was just to show up. And it was still so hard. That was maybe 5 years ago, 4 years ago, 2018, beginning of 2018 when I signed up. But it's very hard. But then once you get going, you're like, oh, I just want more help. I just want more good people around me. But so hard to start for sure.
We have this saying in the UK. I don't know if you guys have it there, because most of my clients are in the US. We've realized that some of these like metaphors don't quite translate. But we say a problem shared is a problem halved, which basically means as soon as you've spoken something out and told it to someone else, it gives you that relief. And yeah, you're absolutely right. Like clients that I work with, we get so much in our own heads, especially as introverts, right? Because we internalize and we process everything internally. And then we get on thought loops. And depending on our human design type, for example, we can really get stuck thinking the same thoughts over and over again. And it's so hard to then step away from that and just having someone externally to break that loop or to ask you a question from a different perspective can make all the difference.
Absolutely. And totally agree. I would say a problem shared is a problem 90% solved. I think sharing it is the biggest factor, honestly. So totally agree with that.
So one of the things that you said in your questionnaire, and I love this, and I definitely want to touch on this because I talk a lot about scaling businesses and outsourcing, and it is so essential, even more so for introverts, I think, to get rid of the tasks that are not in their zone of genius, that are overwhelming them, that take up time but feel really difficult to do. Like for me, it's things like scheduling my blog posts. It takes me so long. It's not a difficult task. I can do it, but it takes long. It gets me frustrated and it drains my energy and it's not worth it. I can pay someone else to do it. They do it perfectly and, the world is a good place. But you alluded to the fact of things like even like getting meal deliveries in and things like that I think people don't always think. It's so easy to get overwhelmed by what should I cook? Do I need to go to the grocery store? I need to clear up after it. All of these different things. And you've gone, yep, I just get meals delivered now. So there's no overwhelm there.
Yeah, that is huge for me. And again, I even mentioned like the kitchen when I was saying what overwhelms me. I'm so sensitive physically that sensations, touch, things like that are hard for me. And so for me, cooking was the single biggest energy drain because I'm not a details person. I'm not that task. I'm a big picture person and I'm very physically sensitive. So I was shopping, cooking, and deciding what to cook. And then I would cook too much or it wouldn't turn out well. And then cleaning. And it felt like it took up my whole day. And so when I gave myself permission to say, I'm just overwhelmed by cooking and I need to try asking for help, I experimented with a couple meal delivery services. And now I have one that delivers me, no joke, 18 meals a week, including breakfast. And then I eat 3 times out. And so, yeah, it is a little more expensive, but, then I don't buy a new car. Then I don't make other purchases that I don't need. And so I did that. And then I was like, oh, I actually have time to work on my business now that I'm not cooking all day. And I've been working on Instagram and specifically short videos and reels and TikToks because that's very popular now in business and gets a lot of views. And so I made this great Instagram video that got like 27,000 views and like 25 new followers. And I never would have had the time to make that or the energy to really think deeply and make a quality video if I had been rushing through the food. I probably would have made a video, but it just would have been an attention grab or some lame thing that nobody would have resonated. And then even since I filled out your questionnaire, I've had a new step in that, which is I actually did hire an online social media manager to work with my social media. So now instead of spending 3 hours painstakingly making this video, I spend about 30 minutes planning it and recording it. And then someone else does the 2 hours of editing necessary to make it a really great clip. And so it's almost like the food helped me do something else. And then I was like, oh, what if I got even more help and moved, even more into introverted time? And so, yes, like can't recommend enough. Once you know something like is overwhelming, just test every single way to, get help with it. And it's okay to do that, no matter how simple, even if it's just cooking. I'm still embarrassed to say that, honestly, that I don't cook.
Really?
But yeah, it's still a little embarrassing, but it's okay because it works for me.
One of the things that I have done for a long time is pay someone to walk the dog or have the dog go to daycare for the day for the same reason. Like I love the dog, but he does bark a lot. So today is batch podcast recording day. So he goes off to daycare for the day, which, yeah, people could say like, well, you could have your dog at home. Well, I could, but I know he's going to bark. I've got to think about like taking him out twice during the day. I've got to schedule that into breaks. Actually, if he's not there and I've got peace and quiet. I've got some time, like you say, some introvert time that I can maybe be creative or meditate or do what I need to do. Then I can record these podcast interviews without worrying about him barking and stop it and it's got to be edited out. And it's just all of those small things that can add up and be really overwhelming. So the fact that he's away playing with the dogs, having a nice time, I get to get everything done is just a win-win.
Definitely. Totally agree. And since my dog is upstairs right now, I told my wife who's working from home, like, if he barks, please go get him right away and wrangle him because he also is very loud. But so far, he's been good.
Oh, I'm glad to hear it. But it's so true. And I think one of the phrases that I use with clients is just because you can doesn't mean you should. And typically my clients are very capable, very intelligent, maybe even overachieving. I'm going to say type A, come from, very impressive backgrounds like I did. And we want to do things really well. We want to do things perfectly. And we are, really good at most things. We can turn our hand to things and it can be good. But just because we can doesn't mean we should. So I could spend, I don't even want to think about how much time I could spend redesigning my website, but is it going to be as good as paying someone else to do it? No. Is it the best use of my time and energy? No. Is it going to frustrate me? Eventually, yes. And it's really hard when you can do tasks, like you're saying, like you can cook, but actually it's just better all around if you don't and someone else does it for you.
Yeah, definitely.
So in terms of coaching, therapy, that kind of support, once you've had it, can you imagine not having it?
Oh, no, I can't go back now. I say my goal, like my only priority in life is, I put it this way, to work on my own trauma and my own, emotional challenges and well-being. And if I do that, everything else falls into place. So for me, it actually is something as bold as is to say that comes above my marriage, which is a great marriage going on 5 years, that comes above my business, that comes above my family, because if I'm acting out of my emotional insecurities or my, trauma, then I'm going to hurt my family, my marriage, and other people. And so definitely just my life has taken such a positive turn. And I don't just mean, in terms of monetary success. I had to spend a year and a half just writing my book and paying my editor. And I let my clients go at that time. I just wrote and I didn't earn. And that was a big move. But I'm so fulfilled having created good work and worked on myself that now I'm really ready to come back out to the world and serve, through my business. So it just pays off in spades when you get help.
And sometimes as introverts, it is much better for us to go deep on that one thing. Like you say, I'm going to write the book. So that's what you're doing. When we try to scatter and fragment our energy and take on too many different tasks at once, I always think that the quality of our energy deteriorates. I always think of it as being like having 100% energy, and I can put 100% of it into one thing, or I can put, 20% here and 35% here, and it's just not going to have the same power behind it. So did you feel that once you did that and you were concentrating on the book, that it was easier to get things done?
Yes, definitely. And I think the biggest thing that helped is that I genuinely believed in what I was doing. Because before, when I was, potentially offering coaching services or, trying out different business ideas, I knew that to some extent I was rushing everything and that I was going for a short-term attention grab. And when I wrote my book, I was like, I'm going to be proud of this no matter what, and having the confidence to back myself without any reservations and without needing an immediate financial payoff is going to make my future so much more successful. But even today, I'd say, if my book never never got another review, I'd still be so proud of it. And paradoxically, that makes me want to go promote it and talk about it, because I just love it so much.
And when we take the pressure off those things, and I think doing something for the joy of it, I know a trap that I fell into early in my business, and I know a lot of my clients have, is they start their business to do work that they love and make a difference. And then it becomes a bit of a rat race in the online space of feeling like you have to make a certain amount of money or have a certain amount of followers, and it gets kind of disconnected. But when we come back round and connect back with that, well, why are you doing what you're doing? What do you want your day to be like? How do you want to feel? How do you want your clients to feel? What do you want to create? When they actually connect back with that, the monetary results come just through the fact that they're doing work they love and they're in like a state of pure joy.
Yeah. And I think you said something so important, which is the online rat race. Because the moment you go into entrepreneurship and you follow 50 different Instagram accounts that are all super successful and have 100,000 followers, you're like, oh my gosh, like I'm a failure. I'll never amount to anything. I mean, I have a friend who is like blowing up right now and getting like 1,000 Instagram followers a day. And it's tempting to just be like, oh my gosh, like, why can't I just have that? But I think it's kind of like I have had body image issues in the past, another male thing that's more female oriented. But as a man, I've had body image issues. And it's because I'm comparing to all these bodybuilders or all these super successful people, which isn't realistic, and it's not healthy for me either. I call it like entrepreneur dysmorphia when you go online and see all the most successful entrepreneurs, when in reality, most people are working hard. If you're a beginner, they're all beginning too, but you only see the most successful at the very top. And that doesn't even guarantee happiness anyway. So one tip I do is when I was writing my book, I definitely only followed the entrepreneurs I was really going to take their content deeper with. So let's say I'm following you, I would join your Facebook community, which I did today, by the way.
I saw that. Welcome.
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm really excited. Peer support groups are amazing. And then I would really read your digest and your content, but maybe 5 other people who I was just trying to mimic on the surface level, I would unfollow. And so like I recommend really picking your spots with who you follow on social media and going deep with those people as well.
I make no secret of the fact that I mute almost everyone on social media. So I don't have an Instagram feed other than ads, unfortunately. And I use newsfeed blocker. I can't remember what it's called for Facebook. So I don't get a feed. I don't get a scroll. So if I want to consume someone's content, I'm actively going in because I'm like, let's see what that person's doing. And it just gives me that control rather than, I don't know, feeling kind of overwhelmed, I guess, and screamed at by everyone. It's more like, I haven't seen what that person's up to for a while. Let me go. And I prefer to then watch their stories and maybe read the last 4 or 5 posts, and rather than just it being fragmented and all of this different stuff coming at me. And I think it's important to take back that control for ourselves.
Totally agree. And it's getting even crazier out there in the feeds because I do stay up with it for my own business and to connect with some people. And they're prioritizing short videos right now, but even Facebook and Instagram, the feeds now give me random short videos. It's like a guy with a Lamborghini. And then it's like, some girl in a dress walking around. And I'm like, who are these people? Like, I don't even know you. And so that's the influence TikTok has had on social media, but it's definitely a crazy world out there. It actually gives me a lot of relief to hear you say you totally mute the feed, because I used to post on Facebook and be like, guys, am I crazy for not wanting to get any news ever, basically? And people would say, yeah, you're crazy. You got to stay informed. There are these positive keywords, like you need to stay informed on the business. You need to stay aware of all the strategies. You need to stay on all the tips. And the real answer is, don't talk to all that. Go to your audience directly, ask them what they need, and then make something for them. And you don't need all the distractions,
I do a lot of market research. That's something that I talk about a lot. And, a lot of my clients have been with me a long time and I get to know my audience. And when I say, like, how do you like to consume content? And they're like, I like podcast episodes and I like long form content. So I'm like, great. I have a Facebook group where I'll write things and post it. And I have a podcast that I release weekly. So I think there is something to staying informed, but it's not necessarily staying informed so that you can jump on the bandwagon. So here we're now making a decision about, do we even continue really with Instagram? I talked about this in a podcast episode a few weeks ago, because it's prioritizing video so much, and video isn't a big part of our marketing strategy because people tell me that they don't particularly want to watch it. So is there any point in me trying to mold myself into doing this short video because it's popular, or should I just stick to what I'm doing and trust that the right people will come? I'm not saying there's a right or wrong answer there, but I think when we do have limited energy and we don't want to get overwhelmed, it's important to, decide which lane we're going to be in.
Totally agree. And the one that energizes you is always the one that works the best in the long run. So totally agree.
Yeah, I could release podcast episodes every day. I mean, I'm not sure if people would listen every day, but, I find it very nourishing to release the podcast. It's never an issue for me. If I need to whip up a solo episode, I never think, I don't know what to say. Like, it's just not something that troubles me. Whereas, the video aspect would take more time and energy. And that's not to say I won't do it one day, but also, do I want to do it if my audience are going to go, I'm not interested in watching that.
Right. Exactly.
So obviously, you mentioned the book. Tell us a little bit more about what really prompted you to write it.
Yeah. So basically something that happened to me is I was marketing myself as a coach in 2018, 2019, 2020. I had quit my corporate day job, and yet I wasn't finding success because I was still overwhelmed and didn't really have the training or the skills to help people. And so I said, you know what? I need to actually take a step back and become the best version of myself so that I can serve people. If I'm going to coach people, I need to experiment and find what works for me. And so I spent a year working on fitness, health, well-being. But frankly, I was still very, very stressed and confused, and again, got into some body image issues. And all this to say that in 2020, I really hit kind of a rock bottom where I was, I'd quit my job. I wasn't succeeding. I was really struggling, and I just needed mental health help. And I had to just ask for help. And so I wasn't at a point of like, oh, therapy might be nice, or oh, a support group might be nice. I was at, I am toast. I won't write this book if I don't get help. Like I had a book idea about worrying less and, just a lot of ideas I had. But I thought, oh man, I have too many mental health issues to finish this. So I joined a dedicated support group for my mental health diagnosis. I started meeting with them almost every day online, virtually. It was amazing. And it was this structured group where like everybody could share about their struggles. And I was like, this is the best thing. It's so nourishing to hear other people have the same diagnosis as me, the same struggles. And so then I started getting more and more energy. And then I got a therapist. And then that was going better. And then I thought, you know what? This book I'm writing kind of needs to change into a book about how to get help. And so I had been writing a book on how to stop yourself from worrying at all costs. You don't need any help. Just do this exercise. But the exercise I designed didn't work. There was no cure-all. Like you said, it didn't work on myself. And so that draft I wrote in 2021, I sent to some people and they were like, it's okay, Woody. But it's like, do we really believe it? No. So I retooled my book and put in all the things I had learned about asking for help. And I realized there was this great metaphor, or whatever it's called, that life is like a rip current in the ocean. When you go in the ocean, there are certain currents that pull you away faster than you can swim. And you have to ask for help, because if you try to swim against it, you're going to drown. And so everyone's taught, when you're at a beach, if you're in a rip current, yell and swim parallel to the current until someone can help you or until you float around the side. And so I wrote a book themed off of that metaphor, and it's called Help, I'm Overwhelmed, a 4-step method for escaping life's rip currents and living a peaceful and meaningful life. And then it's very simple, 8 chapters, and it's about the steps you can take to admit you need help, to stop panicking against the current, to not drown, and then to get the help you need and accept it, and get back to the shore. And the premise is, I don't need to be the successful guy on my Reels feed with a Lamborghini. I need to be someone who is safe and taken care of and provided for and doing something I love. And I think we are just not fed that message in modern society. We are fed the message of external success. And it's so overwhelming that I thought the world needed a book about it. And I know the younger me and the current me needed it. So it just ended up being writing to myself. And I think it came out really well.
I love what you said about the support groups as well, because I think it's something that as introverts, we do tend to kind of internalize our problems and not necessarily talk to people, and definitely don't want to go and share them with a bunch of strangers online a lot of the time. Like I see in a lot of Facebook groups, people put in, what's your biggest struggle in business right now? Comment below. And then all these people are commenting. And I just think they're not introverts, because the introverts are like, I'm not sharing that. But there is something so powerful when you find the right group. And this is why I love my Facebook community, because people can share something they're struggling with in there, or they can ask a question and they will get people that are like them and understand them. And they go, yeah, I feel like this too. This is what I did, or, this is what I recommend. And the fact that you had such a great result from that support group as well is just to say to people, don't necessarily think, oh, I'm an introvert, I need to do it alone. When groups are the right people and are supportive, they can be exponentially supportive.
Yeah. And actually, I had to have one. So not just the mental health, but for writing. This is the coolest support group I've been in a way. I'm in a group that's called Shut Up and Write. It's like a company that hosts these virtual and in-person writing things. But what we do is we get on Zoom, we talk for 10 minutes, then we write for the rest of the hour. We actually turn our cameras and mics off, and then we talk for 10 more minutes, and then we write for 50 minutes. And so it's a little bit of structured social talk, but it's mostly just me on a blank screen. But somehow we're all struggling with writing, or for me now, I'll be writing content, not the actual book. But I still get on this group every day almost and write with them. And so that you can have companionship while still respecting structure and introverted boundaries. That's a message I would say.
I love that. And I think what it does do as well, like we talked about early on, it takes away that decision fatigue. So if that's just something that you do every day that is a nourishing part of your routine and gets you closer to your goals, and you know that you can just turn up at that time and shut up and write, then that in and of itself is going to be so good for your nervous system.
Definitely.
So obviously, we are going to recommend your book. We're going to pop the link to that in the show notes. But of course, I'm going to ask you for another recommendation of another book that you think would help my audience of ambitious introverts who are looking to grow or scale their online business.
Yeah, I wish I could recommend like 10, but I think the book, if I could just hand people one that wasn't mine, it would be Outwitting the Devil by Napoleon Hill. Have you heard of that book?
Yeah.
I don't know if someone else has recommended that yet, but...
No, we've had Think and Grow Rich, I think, as a recommendation, but yeah, not Outwitting the Devil.
I think Think and Grow Rich is great. I think it's like pretty repetitive, but it's got a great point. But Outwitting the Devil is this book that Napoleon Hill wrote in like the 1940s and then never released, and it got released in the 2000s because it was too controversial for him to publish, and his wife wouldn't let him publish it. And it's about all the different societal factors that kind of stifle us and make us not use our greatest potential. And so I think I just didn't realize how so many different external factors were making me think it's not okay to be sensitive. It's not okay to be an introvert. It's not okay to be empathetic, or that would make me think I'm empathetic. That means I never challenge anybody. I never question anything. I want to agree with everything because I'm so like warm-hearted and empathetic. And so I love Outwitting the Devil by Napoleon Hill because it just talks, and it's like society is going to come at you and you need to learn to think for yourself. And it really freed me up from thinking I had to just listen to somebody else instead of really following my heart. So I love that book. I think it's a really unique find.
Perfect. Thank you for sharing that. I'm going to pop the link in the show notes along with your book and along with all of your other links. So if any listeners want to come and connect with you and find you online. But in the meantime, thank you so much for coming and being so open and honest and sharing with us today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's been a blast.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Ambitious Introvert Podcast with me, Emma-Louise Parks. If you enjoy this show, please subscribe, rate, and leave a review on iTunes. As a thank you, one lucky reviewer each month will win a 60-minute one-on-one coaching session with me, where you'll get the clarity and confidence to attract your ideal clients. And if you know someone who could benefit from listening to the show, then please do share and help me reach as many fellow ambitious introverts as possible.